Hello and welcome to the AWS Morning Brief, although I've got to say it's not particularly brief. Given that reInvent happened last week to many of us, there are more announcements than normal. This episode is sponsored in part by Influx Data. Influx Data is somehow, after reInvent, like Amazon TimeStream, which still doesn't exist, except for the part that Influx has customers. They are the de facto standard in the world of time series databases. To learn more, check them out at influxdata.com. That's influxdata.com, and my thanks to them for sponsoring this more ridiculous than normal podcast this week. So, what happened last week in the world of AWS? More than normal. In no particular order, we'll break this into a few different days. Let's begin. Amazon API Gateway offers faster, cheaper, simpler APIs using HTTP APIs. In preview, because of course it is. HTTP APIs are apparently both far simpler than API Gateway, as well as significantly cheaper. Best of all, they are a perfect demonstration of the AWS product naming team taking all of Q4 off. It also needs to be simpler so as to need absolutely no documentation whatsoever, because the name of HTTP APIs is completely ungoogleable. You are never going to get results for this without seriously massaging a search engine. Amazon Chime now uses 14 AWS regions to host meetings closer to participants. And given that I'm the only Amazon Chime customer who is not Amazon themselves, I guess I really have been traveling to a whole lot of places lately. Amazon EC2 Nitro system-based instances now support 36% faster Amazon EBS optimized instance performance. That is a tremendously convoluted and complicated way of saying that if you're using an instance to talk to EBS volumes, it now got faster. Relatedly, if you're using IO1 volumes for anything, you probably don't want to do that. Often there's a barrier on the instance side itself that no matter how many IOPS you give that volume, it's not going to get any faster. Take a look at the limits around EC2 instance throughput to EBS. So bounce your nodes, convert them to GP2, and be happier. Oh, incidentally, to take advantage of this, you're going to have to reinstantiate your nodes. So it's time once again to recycle all of your existing instances if you want them to take advantage of this new feature. Amazon ECS capacity providers are now available, and I think it's a big deal, but this announcement didn't get its own blog post. It just got a release announcement, and it is so poorly articulated that I can't be sure that it's important or honestly means anything at all. So if you know what the hell this is, please let me know. Amazon Kinesis Video Streams adds support for real-time two-way media streaming with WebRTC. And this is a very, very easy service to explain unless for some reason you're not allowed to use the word pornography, in which case it's almost impossible. Amazon Neptune Workbench provides in-console experience to query your graph. That is a very polite, very esoteric way of saying that the Amazon Neptune console is now actually usable to look at your data. Now, whether you should need to log into the AWS console in the first place just to look at your data is an entirely separate issue, but the answer to that is no. We're going to let that slide for now, but don't worry, next year is a whole new year of sarcasm and criticism. Amazon Redshift introduces RA3 nodes with managed storage, enabling independent compute and storage scaling. That is a very high-level way of saying that they've divorced storage from compute from Amazon Redshift, which is a further way of saying that if you want to scale up, it's now not going to cost kidnap the princess for ransom money. Instead, it's going to cost kidnap the ducal heir for ransom money. Redshift also introduces support for federated querying in preview, which is a super boring way to talk about something very interesting. Specifically, it's going to support being able to query Redshift, and it hits a whole bunch of different data stores. Whether it's Redshift itself, S3, DynamoDB, your tax returns, etc., 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 it is stepping towards a single point of querying for vastly different data storage engines. Ask once, get data from everywhere. Once you normalize it and aren't particularly constrained by a given SQL query syntax that may or may not map well to various data storage engines, but that's the best kind of problem, someone else's, today. Amazon S3 access points make it simple to manage access at scale for applications using shared data sets on S3. This is a highfalutin way of talking about an incredibly riveting feature that people need to pay attention to. It talks about scale. It talks about data lakes. Let me give you an uncomfortable truth. If you have a data lake, you probably don't think of it as a data lake. You just think of it as the place where the logs live, or all the image storage, or effectively a whole bunch of data just hanging out in S3, and you're not entirely sure what it is. So when they talk about a feature being for data lakes, it's for you, but you don't know it's for you. Further, even with small amounts of data, being able to have different endpoints that you can query that data from that have different access permissions is incredibly powerful. You can become much more granular now with how your applications talk to data and dramatically minimize your blast radius if in the event of a security issue. Now, Amazon being Amazon, they're not telling that story super well, but that's okay. I'm here to make fun of them until they do. Amazon VPC ingress routing makes it easy to insert virtual appliances in the forwarding path of VPC traffic, which is a very network-centric way of saying that a bunch of legacy network vendors just got themselves a brand new lease on life in the cloud, unfortunately. Expect the RSA conference to be absolutely insufferable next year. Announcing accelerated site-to-site VPN for improved VPN performance. Faster site-to-site VPN is awesome, and people should be interested in this until you realize that for each connection under this service, you're going to be charged an accelerated site-to-site VPN connection fee, a data transfer out fee, an AWS Global Accelerator hourly fee, and an accelerated site-to-site VPN data transfer premium fee. And there's absolutely nothing that I can say that is funnier or more cutting than that. Announcing Amazon Augmented AI so you can easily implement human review for machine learning predictions. And let me take a look at this. What do we have? Okay. Amazon Augmented AI, or Amazon A2I. No, that is not an acceptable abbreviation. Holy crap, Amazon, who hurt you? Amazon Chime Meetings app for Slack is now available. If Chime can directly integrate with Slack, then my reasons to use Slack grow fewer and fewer, since they're apparently not innovating much anymore past screwing up the message editor. Announcing Amazon Kendra, reinventing enterprise search with machine learning, because of course it needs to be machine learning. Now, it costs big money, and it is very clearly aimed at enterprise scale companies. So think of this in terms of $7,000 a month territory for those who are wondering. But think about this for a second. Someone has finally built an effective search engine for Google Docs. That's huge. Announcing Amazon Managed Apache Cassandra service now in preview. And I've got to say, first, there's an awful lot of open source folks who are going to be sad here, but it feels an awful lot like DynamoDB with a Cassandra API. Now, if the existing providers of managed Cassandra follow in the path of other companies like Elastic or MongoDB and other companies that are built on top of open source technologies, then these companies are going to rapidly differentiate themselves from the Amazon offering by, instead of adding features, instead by whining about Amazon's entrance to the space to absolutely anyone who will listen. Now, you're further going to notice that Amazon Managed Apache Cassandra Service abbreviates to AMAX, which presumably is extremely picky about what text editor you use with it. This episode is sponsored by Chaos Search. Chaos Search is an Elasticsearch-compatible API that costs far less than Elasticsearch because the data lives in S3 and the querying part takes place through containers that are running alongside that. They separate storage from compute. Now, I could tell you what they are, but let me tell you instead what they are not. To wit, they're not threatening customers of other Elasticsearch providers. They are not charging you an arm and a leg. They are not making you deal with the hassle of running your own Elasticsearch cluster itself. If you have Elasticsearch problems in terms of bill, complexity, or vague legal threats from an increasingly terrible company, consider Chaos Search instead. To learn more, visit chaossearch.io, tell them Corey sent you, at which point they will roll their eyes in exasperation, say, "Of course he did," and then listen to what they might be able to help you with. Thanks again to Chaos Search for sponsoring this ridiculous podcast. Announcing Amazon Redshift Data Lake Export. Share data in Apache Parquet format. That is incredibly boring, but what it means is you can now export query results from Redshift in a format that you could use Athena to query. Why would you want to do that? Because Athena costs orders of magnitude less than Redshift does, because Redshift is designed for people fleeing Oracle. And Oracle costs extortionate piles of money because Redshift only costs ridiculous piles of money. We're down another couple levels of magnitude here. Announcing AWS Wavelength for delivering ultra-low latency applications for 5G. In fact, during the keynote, they had the CEO of Verizon come on stage and say that 5G is the best G yet. I don't really know what to say to that, but I think this is strategically fascinating and a brilliant move by AWS because no one really knows what 5G is yet other than a whole bunch of hype. And people are going to be building applications on top of it. Maybe they work, maybe they won't. But by providing effectively a bunch of compute capacity right there on the telco premises, they're able to get access on the ground floor to 5G deployments. They're able to see what gets developed, all for the investment cost of what effectively amount to a bunch of outpost racks that they have to ship to Verizon. That's really interesting to see here. Now, to be clear, they're also partnering with other providers in other countries, but this is U.S.-centric at the moment, so let's talk about Verizon for a minute. This is neat because largely telecom services are commoditized, for better or worse. Some are slightly better than others, but it's not a matter of, oh, I have Verizon, so I can make a phone call to you, but I have AT&T, so I can't. Now, this is either a story of Verizon trying to view this as a competitive advantage, or it's a matter of them keeping pace. But either way, they're going to be investing heavily in 5G. When you have everything being connected through high bandwidth, low latency connections to the cellular network, a lot of things become possible, but no one really knows what those look like yet. Amazon is now positioning themselves on the ground floor to see what's going on in this space. That's huge. If it works and it's not just hype, they're there. If it is hype, they can walk away without embarrassing themselves. That's awesome. So we'll see what happens. One way or another, someone's about to learn something. And we will continue this another time. Thank you again for listening. Tune in tomorrow. There's more to come.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.